You can see here where the origins are. So China is obviously the largest. We include China and Hong Kong together for this purpose, although they do function very differently. Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Taiwan, 20 years ago, this would have looked very, very different. Really, this is a chart that has taken shape over the last decade. China was not even on the map. We had no direct service of any kind. We were exporting very little. We were importing very little. And now that whole picture has changed quite dramatically. About 31% of the local cargoes that we're receiving are being trucked down from Seattle and Tacoma. We use that 31% to help recruit carriers. We say, hey, you can save, it's about $600 a truck ride. You can save $600 if you'll bring per container, if you'll bring your ship up the river and to Portland. It's a tough sell, to be blunt, in this market, but we're confident that this is something we're going to be able to grow. You can see some of the importers in the state. Walmart certainly out in Hermiston. Most of that actually is trucked up from Los Angeles, and we're working very hard to figure out a way that works within their logistics system to get some of that directly. But Subaru has just located their major West Coast distribution facility in Rivergate. That's huge because all that cargo is coming from Japan. Most of our containerized agricultural exports want to go to Japan. The Japanese are not exporting very much anymore, and so getting an empty container that wants to go back to Japan to be filled with imports is a really big deal. We're very excited about that. Exports, hay and animal feed. This has been a long-time staple of port-related exports, very important. Most of it is compressed. A lot of this is, most of it I think is targeted actually at Japan, but increasingly we're seeing it in Korea and China. It's animal feed. Japanese, it's a small island, a lot of people. They don't have a lot of room to be storing hay. Compressed hay makes a lot of sense, and they've been big customers for this. Agricultural and reefer cargo, still a lot of frozen French fries going down the river, paperboard, logs, softwood, hardwood, scrap metal. So these are the places we're sending things to. Japan, as you see, is still a very, very large market. It will continue to be so for us because of the historic ties. Taiwan, 7%, China at 20%, that will grow. Korea at 21%, that will also grow. We have about, if you were looking at that top number there, about twice as many containerized exports as we do containerized imports. And that is extremely unusual in the United States. In most places, you have 3, 4, or 5 times more imports than you have exports. This is a real logistics challenge to solve, and it's one of the reasons why I'm actually hoping that freight rates for exports will go up a little, and carriers will begin to say, hey, I can make a buck there, and we'll start seeing more capacity in Portland for the exports that are otherwise being trucked up to Seattle or Tacoma, or maybe aren't going at all because the cost is too great to truck them. So, I think this is not a particularly unique message, but when you're thinking about growing, the first thing you want to do is look at what you're already doing well and expand that. And I think these are 3 biggies. Metals, obviously, is a very, very big part of that. High technology components. We all think about Intel, but they're not the only ones. And then, of course, agriculture, which is particularly important to us. Particularly the first and last item require significant continuing and ongoing investments in transportation infrastructure. We talked about the river issues. That's certainly important, but just old-fashioned meat and potatoes, roads and rails very, very important. In the metro area, particularly, having an adequate supply of industrial land is vital. We've got a strong system of land use planning in the state, and we're getting to a point now where things are getting constrained, and not everybody seems to appreciate the fact that when you draw circles around urban areas, you're trying to cause development inside the urban areas, and development means housing, retail, commercial, and industrial. So we at the Port have gone around the metro area, and we're going to continue to do this, to buy endangered pieces of industrial property and hold them and make sure they're developed for industrial purposes and not converted to something else. Otherwise, we'll wake up one day and not have opportunities for industrial development. These are really three biggies for us. The Columbia River crossing, if you looked at that earlier map that I showed you, almost everything we own is on a parallel alignment with the Columbia River, and the Columbia River crossing is enormously important to not just to the Port, but to everybody who is a customer of ours. And I-5 is really one of the central road trade arteries in the United States. It not only connects two states and two communities, Vancouver and Portland, it connects countries. And this lift span that you see here on the Washington span is the only interstate lift span in the United States. And it just doesn't make any sense. And it really causes a great deal of congestion, which means money. The Connect Oregon program has been terrific. Historically, we really have not had a source in Oregon to help fund port projects around the state, rail projects, and some small airport projects. This is done, and it's been a really great program. We're enormously grateful for it. I mentioned industrial land. I mentioned West Hayden Island in particular. We are in the midst of a land use process with the City of Portland. This is 800 acres. We're going to end up probably being able to develop 300 if we hang tough. But that's enough to mount a state-of-the-art, for example, grain export facility, and that's kind of what's in my head: grain-related, food-related exports, and I think we're going to make it happen. So that concludes my presentation. I appreciate your questions and attention. Be happy to answer any further questions you may have.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.